all the verses that people use to condemn polygamy, they're all saying a man is to have a wife. It's not saying a man is to only have one wife. All the verses that people use, Old and New Testament, where it's reciting Genesis 2:24, where it says a man is to leave his father and mother and be joined to his wife, those verses are not condemning polygamy. In fact, they still leave room open for polygamy. For instance, let's pretend that there's a verse in the Bible that says every man is to have his own cat. Even though I have two cats, I'm still considered as a man who has his own cat. Do you see what I'm saying? It's simple grammar. Simple grammar, if you follow the grammatical rules, you will see that those verses still leave room open for polygamy. There's not any Levitical laws that condemn polygamy, but there are Levitical laws that condemn every other sexual relationship combination, aside from one man, one woman, of course. There's Levitical laws condemning every other sexual combination besides one man, one woman, but there's not one condemning polygamy. If polygamy was ever a sin, I'm sure that God would have had a Levitical law condemning it. So there's literally verses that there's all sorts of passages that show God blessing men of God with multiple wives. For example, 2 Samuel 12:8, I believe, is where it says that it talks about God blessing David with multiple things, including his master's wives. So, okay, also, for anyone who says, why don't we see multiple wives in the New Testament? Well, the storytelling in the New Testament, there could be a multitude of reasons, okay? For one, we really don't see the wives being talked about too much in the New Testament, okay? And it could just happen that the wives that we do see, the husbands and wives that we do see talked about, they just so happen to be married to one wife. The storytelling is different, the time frame is different. It's a much smaller time frame than what we see in the Old Testament. The Old Testament is a much larger time frame that it's covering, and the storytelling is different. The history telling is different. It's giving the broad, like the broad strokes. The New Testament is a very specific time frame, a very specific, it's focused on a specific group of people, the disciples of Christ, the apostles, that are all living together in this smaller space of time than what we see in the Old Testament. And if anything, the passage where 1 Timothy 3:12, where it says that deacons are to only have one wife, I think that could point to that there were Christians/Jews that had multiple wives within those times, because why would Paul specifically need to call that out if there wasn't? Or that the option wasn't still available for Christians. So anyone who says that, oh, it's just given because they are to be an example, you're reading that into the text. You're reading that into the text that saying, oh, deacons are to only have one wife to be an example for the rest of the Christians to only have one wife. The text does not plainly say that. You're reading that into the text. I mean, it could be a possibility, but taking all the other things into account, I mean, I don't think so.